Hey, thanks for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Torah government system. As we know, the commandments of the Torah tell us how we are to love Elohim and how we are to love our neighbor. But they also tell us how the government system is supposed to be set up whenever the people enter into the land of Canaan and how that structure is to work. In considering this, we might look at this rough diagram that illustrates some of these positions and roles that are mentioned in the Torah. And that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. We might consider the Torah government as being set up in a hierarchy similar to this. That obviously at the top we have Elohim, because Elohim is the one we are serving, and Elohim is the author of the law. And so he is obviously the top of the hierarchy. And next we have these three roles of the priests of Aaron, Aaron's priesthood, and the Levites. We have the king and we have prophets. The priests of Aaron obviously administer the law. They're doing the rituals, and they are also serving as a sort of supreme court, as we will see, to interpret cases of the law. And we have prophets that are the representatives of Elohim, because they are receiving messages from Elohim and directing the people accordingly. Deuteronomy 18 describes that prophets will be sent, future prophets beyond Moses, and that they are to be listened to. So we could consider them alongside this structure, because a prophet is probably going to be needed to appoint the king, because the king is supposed to be appointed by Elohim, and also prophets could give direction and message that direct the nation as a whole and otherwise direct the king. And then we have the king and also the leaders of the tribes, that there are leaders of each individual tribe. And underneath them we also have judges and officers that are being appointed, and also the chiefs of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. So let's consider some of these individually, starting with the priests of Aaron. We could divide this down into another hierarchy, which looks like the great priest or the high priest of Aaron, and underneath him the priests of Aaron that are not the great priest or high priest, and also the Levites. The Levites are appointed to serve as the ministers of the priesthood of Aaron. One thing we might consider from the beginning is that a skeptic might argue that any kind of theocracy or any type of government that involves a priesthood is likely just set up by the priesthood so that their class will dominate everyone else, that they will acquire all of the resources, and they will acquire control over all of the people. Now, one thing about this that is kind of unique about the Torah is that the priesthood and the Levites, they are actually prevented from acquiring land and acquiring the inheritance in the same way that the rest of the tribes would be able to do. So they are not actually given an inheritance of land like the other tribes, which kind of offsets their role otherwise, as we see in Deuteronomy 18, which says in verse 1, "Portion and inheritance with Israel shall not be for priests, the Levites, all scepter of Levi. Fires of Yahuwah and his inheritance they shall eat." So they do not receive a portion and inheritance in the same way that the rest of Israel does. That instead they are receiving the inheritance through the rituals of the tabernacle. And we might also consider this priestly role in reference to this hierarchy, because why does it have to be the Levitical priesthood or the priesthood of Aaron? We might look at Deuteronomy 18:5, which says, "For in him Yahuwah your Elohim chose from all of your scepters to stand to minister in name of Yahuwah, he and his sons all of the days." So very clearly the tribe of Levi has been chosen, and this is to continue for all of the days. Despite what some teachings have said, despite what the book of Hebrews says, that this is the priesthood. And this is the priesthood that's commanded in the law, and it's the priesthood that is for all of the days. And in supporting that, we might look at Numbers 16:40, which says, "Man shall not near, alien, he which is not from seed of Aaron, to burn incense before Yahuwah, and he shall not be as Korach." Only the seed of Aaron is allowed by the law to burn the incense before Yahuwah. This is an important role of the priest. It is one of the commands that the priest is supposed to follow. And if only the seed of Aaron is authorized to do it, obviously only Aaron can fill that role. And in considering this hierarchy of the priests of Aaron and their connection with the rest of the tribe of Levi, of course, Aaron being a part of the tribe of Levi to begin with, but considering their connection to the tribe at large, we could look at Numbers 18. "And Yahuwah said to Aaron, You and your sons and house of your father with you, you shall bear iniquity of the holiness. And you and your sons with you, you shall bear iniquity of your priesthood. And moreover, your brothers, rod of Levi, scepter of your father, bring near with you, and they are obligated on you, and they minister you, and you and your sons with you before tent of the testimony." So the priesthood of Aaron is taking up the responsibility for the tabernacle and the tent of meeting. They are performing the rituals, and they are also administering the law, as we will see. And the rest of the Levites, they are obligated on the priesthood of Aaron. They are given as a gift to Aaron. And they are effectively the ministers of the priesthood, that they are serving their service. They are helping them with the tabernacle and helping them with the duties. And also they are guarding the tent of meeting. And we might see in connection with the rest of the government structure that we looked at, I alluded to the fact that they are sort of a supreme court, as we see in Deuteronomy 17:8-11. In the case that there is a difficult situation that requires judgment, an individual case that is differentiated from the people, it says, "You shall rise and you shall ascend to the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose in it. And you shall come to the priests, the Levites, and to the one judging, which shall be in those days. And you shall inquire, and they shall announce to you word of the judgment. You shall not withdraw from the word which they announce." In the situation where there is an individual case that is too difficult to be decided on the local level, it is being brought to the place which he is choosing to tabernacle his name there. And at the place are the priests, the Levites, and the one judging. And they are giving their judgment on that issue. And the people involved are required to listen to that judgment. They are not allowed to turn to the right or turn to the left. They must listen to that verdict that was given and adhere to it. It is not upon the people to do whatever is right in their own eyes, just as they are doing today. That is not what is supposed to take place. Instead, the priests are given this authority to make judgment over the difficult cases, that the cases are not being resolved on the local level by the local judges. They are being brought up to that level, and at that point, they are making the judgment. So this is one of the roles of the priest, and we see one of their connections and relations with the other people in the hierarchy in this case. So we have the priesthood of Aaron and the Levites which are associated with them. And of course, we also have, at somewhat of a similar level, we have the king. That when the people decide that they want to put a king over them, that they are commanded to place the king which Elohim is choosing. Deuteronomy 17:15. You shall surely place over you king, which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose in him, from midst of your brothers. So Elohim is choosing the king, and presumably he might do this through a prophet. And in the case that he is choosing the king, this king is going to be from the midst of your brethren. He is to be a humble person, someone that is not heaving his heart above the rest of his brethren. And he is also not to seek to accumulate large amounts of resources. And he is also supposed to continue learning the law. We see in Deuteronomy 17:18, "And it shall be, as he is sitting on the throne of his kingdom, and he shall write for him copy of this Torah on scroll from before the priests, the Levites." So obviously in the case that there is the king sitting on the throne of his kingdom, this supposes that the priesthood would still be active, because there is to be a scroll of the Torah that is before the priests. So the Torah is not only relevant, the priesthood is not only relevant, but the king also has to continue learning it. It says he is going to continue reading it. And the king is going to continue learning the Torah. That it's not as if he has just reached some level where he knows the Torah better than everyone else or anything like that, but instead he is to continue reading it every day and to learn how to fear his Elohim, as it says in this passage. And this whole passage assumes that the priesthood is still relevant, that they are still in charge of the Torah, and that the Torah is still relevant, and that learning it is relevant to us knowing how to fear Elohim. So we have this king, and while his responsibilities are not laid out explicitly, we might see him as maybe taking on some of the role that Moses took on. Moses obviously was an important prophet. He was the servant of Elohim, and he was receiving the commands from Elohim and directing the people as a result. But he was also making some decisions that were not said to be commands of Elohim. So we might consider whenever Amalek attacked in Exodus 17, his response was to command Joshua to muster the army to fight back. And so we have him making decisions in the narrative that go beyond things that are said to be just the command of Elohim. And obviously there is also this role of having a figure that is leading all of the tribes in unity. So we have the priesthood and we have the king. And underneath the king, we could consider the leaders of the individual tribes. The tribal leaders, the Nasiae. They are the heads of the house of their fathers. And while the Torah does not explicitly command that they be appointed, they already existed in the course of the wilderness, and there are commands that address them otherwise. For example, in Numbers 7:2, it refers to them and says, "And leaders of Israel, heads of house of their fathers, they were leaders of the tribes." Each of the individual tribes had a leader at the head of the tribe. And we see commands that use that same terminology. Leviticus 4:22, "When leaders shall do wrong." So this command explains what the leader is supposed to do if he does wrong in error. It explains the ritual that is done in response. So even though there isn't a command that says to appoint a leader of the tribe, there are commands in place relevant to that structure. And we also see in Exodus 22:28, "Leader in your people you shall not curse." So there are these leaders of the tribes, the Nasiae, the heads of the house of their fathers. Even though the Torah does not explicitly command them to be appointed, there are already commands about what they are to do and commands about how we are to address them. And also, they already existed in the course of the wilderness events. There are passages that talk about who these people were and what they did at various points during the wandering of the wilderness. So the leaders of the tribes, we might consider them as a logical extension of this chiefs of thousands, 100s, 50s, and 10s. That naturally, if there are these chiefs amongst the individual tribes, there would be a chief over all of the people of that one tribe. And the king could be seen as the chief that is above all of them as well. So we have these leaders of the tribes. And also there are judges and officers that we are commanded to appoint. In Deuteronomy 16, verse 18, it says, "Judges and officers you shall set for you in all of your gates, which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving to you, to your scepters, and they shall judge the people judgment of righteousness." So in all of the gates of Canaan, in all of the gates of the cities which Elohim is giving to us, there are to be judges and officers appointed. And it says it is being done to your scepters, or otherwise to your tribes. And they are to judge the people with a judgment of righteousness. Now, there is not necessarily a clear distinction between judges, officers, and the chiefs of thousands, and so forth. Obviously, if we think back to the advice of Jethro or Yithro that was given in Exodus 18, we could consider that a hierarchy of judgment is being set up to teach the law and to assess different issues of controversy and issues of the law, that there is this hierarchy of judges and chiefs that is being appointed, and it says that they are judging the people, as we will see. So there isn't this clear distinction, but we do see that the officers are given this role in Deuteronomy 20, verse 9, in reference to the mustering of the army and in reference to the speaking to them by the priest and the officers. It says that the officers are to speak to the people some specific things, and then it says, "And it shall be, as finishing of the officers, to speak to the people, and they shall notice chiefs of armies in heading of the people." So the officers have a responsibility for noticing a hierarchy in the army, that they are appointing leaders, individuals in the army that are leading the people. And we have this term chiefs, sareh, the same term that's used for the chiefs of thousands and so forth. These are described in Exodus 18, 21 through 22. "And you shall perceive from all of the people men of ability, ones fearing Elohim, men of truth, ones hating gain, and you shall place on them chiefs of thousands, chiefs of hundreds, chiefs of 50s, and chiefs of 10s, and they shall judge." So we have these chiefs, these sareh, these people that are judging the people, and at least in some cases they are leading the army. And in the situation in Exodus 18, when Moses is being advised to appoint them, the situation was that Moses was dealing with every single issue of the law by himself. And of course, there is no practical way for him to do that to his alone, considering how big the entire nation was. And he was advised and chose to do so, chose to delegate his authority. There were the chiefs of thousands, chiefs of hundreds, chiefs of 50s, and chiefs of 10s. And these people, of course, were given different levels of authority, obviously, because they were over a different number of people. And I would assume that Moses probably chose some of the top people, some of the most reputable people, because it says he was looking for people that hated gain, people that were of ability, people that were fearing of Elohim, and people of truth. And he probably appointed the people at the top, and then maybe below them, they appointed individuals that they knew that they could trust, and on down the list. So we might consider this in how it would apply to the nation, that there may not be a clear distinction between the officers and the chiefs and the judges, because in some ways there is overlap of their responsibility. So we have these chiefs and these ones judging that are on different levels of authority. And of course, at the top, which is why I have this little leg off to the side going up to the priests of Aaron, if there is an issue that was too difficult for the judges to decide at the local level, the case is being brought, as mentioned, to the priests. this is how we might consider the Torah government system. It goes all of the way from Elohim down to the individual family level, chiefs of tens. That there is a hierarchy that is built in to the commands of the Torah. That at the bottom of the hierarchy we have these chiefs of various numbers, and they are reporting progressively up, coming back up to the priesthood of Aaron in some cases. And we have these officers and these tribal leaders, and over them we have the king. And also, let's remember the issue of prophets, because prophets may be caused to rise up, and they may give instruction from Elohim in a way that is different from these other roles, but yet very important, obviously. And at the top, of course, we have Elohim, because all of Israel, they are the servants of Elohim. And I want to encourage us, because it's easy to look at these types of things in the Torah, things like the government structure, things like the tabernacle rituals, the rituals that are being done at the tent of meeting with the priesthood of Aaron, and to think about it as if it doesn't really matter now. But the fact is that it is a part of the Torah, even if we are not currently living in a Torah-observant society, in a Torah-observant nation, that it is still important, it is still a part of the Torah, and that we shouldn't just dismiss it. That instead, I encourage us to consider what these things would be like. Because how is it that the Torah is to be observed in the nation? It's not the way that it's being done now. It's not everyone just doing what is right in their own eyes and living in what we might perceive as captivity. It's a very different situation. And so I encourage us to take that into consideration, to look beyond the current situation and to look forward to what it is that is supposed to be, the nation that Elohim is establishing. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out some of my other videos on other Torah issues, and be sure that you stay in touch so we can continue this discussion. Thanks for watching. Remember the commands. Shalom.